For 60 years, the working picture of a brain has been a graph. Neurons are nodes, synapses are edges, and computation is what happens when weighted signals travel those edges. It is a productive picture, but it is incomplete in a specific, physical way. Neurons are not only wired to each other, they are immersed in each other. Every spike perturbs the extracellular electric field, and that field faintly biases nearby neurons. This is ephaptic coupling, influence with no synapse and no directed connection, usually dismissed because 1-to-1 it rounds to 0. A recent talk from Daniel Rebbin and colleagues at Tufts Allen Discovery Center argues that rounding it to 0 is a mistake. His move is to treat the field not as background, but as a second channel running in parallel with the synaptic one, at a different speed. The synaptic channel is fast, about 0.62 millimeters per millisecond. It decides whether a downstream neuron fires. The ephaptic channel is slow, about 0.08 millimeters per millisecond, nearly an order of magnitude slower. It does not decide whether a neuron fires, it nudges when. Two signals leaving the same source at different speeds carry different phases when they arrive, and like any two waves, they interfere. Where they align, neurons synchronize. Where they clash, they do not. The prediction has teeth. Synchrony should not fall off smoothly with distance. It should ripple. And it does. On dense arrays of developing rat cortex, Rebbin finds a non-monotonic, cosine-like bump of extra correlation around 2 to 3 millimeters. The convincing detail is that the ripple's wavelength tracks frequency. Slower beta oscillations give longer wavelengths than faster gamma. That is the fingerprint of genuine interference. There is a second half about development. If the neurons that fail to synchronize die off, a real process called activity-dependent apoptosis, the survivors settle into a banded pattern that standard synapse-only models cannot reproduce. The field does not just modulate activity, it helps decide who gets wired at all. But the argument is honestly incomplete, and the room said so. The combined shape, short-range excitation, and long-range suppression is a Mexican hat, and Mexican hats are cheap. Pattern formation theory has made them for decades from ingredients unrelated to fields. Is the two-speed model the only cause, or merely one? Rebbin conceded the point. His defense is parsimony, and the specific two-exponential model he tested failed to reproduce the structure. That is reasonable, but it is not proof. The signature, on its own, does not uniquely identify its cause. Hold on to that. Here is the observation this piece exists to make. Nothing in the two-speed argument is actually about neurons. Strip it to its logic, and you have units in space, a fast-directed channel carrying decisions, and a slow, undirected channel carrying timing bias to everyone nearby. That is almost line for line a description of a mesh of software agents. They send explicit messages through a broker, the fast axonal channel, and they read and write a shared memory that subtly biases what each does next, the slow ephaptic channel. So the question becomes empirical and cheap. Build the motif with no neurons and no physics. Do you still get the ripple? The testbed is pre-registered with two guardrails. The wavelength is never a parameter, each agent follows local rules, and the synchrony curve is a measured output. And the pass criterion is not the ripple, but the frequency scaling law, wavelength proportional to 1 over frequency, holding across a swept range without retuning. The answer cuts both ways. If it works, the motif is a substrate-independent computational primitive, good news for anyone building neuromorphic systems. But it is awkward news for the biology. If silicon with no field reproduces the signature and its scaling, then observing the ripple in tissue does not, by itself, prove ephaptic coupling caused it. This is not a debunking. Rebbin's model may well be the right account of that dish, and the developmental half is mechanistically specific in a way the software cannot touch. The point is narrower. The observational signature and the causal mechanism must be argued for separately because the signature travels. Pinning it in tissue means perturbing the field, not just observing it.